right. So
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say
there we
welcome,
are.
aren't you?
Welcome again to the Zoom room. Thanks for joining us, Sally, and hopefully Sue will join us shortly.
We'll see.
Always nice to have more than one person, or more than two. There's two of us, but yeah, we'll see. We'll just go with it. So I think let's jump straight into the teaching for today. Let's just make sure I put that up. Okay, there we go. Share my screen with you. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yep, thank you.
If you can read the quote from Eckhart.
When you lose touch with inner stillness, you lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. Your innermost sense of self, of who you are, is inseparable from stillness. This is the I am that is deeper than name and form.
Any thoughts on that?
I was just wondering, have I been still even though I've been doing physical stuff today? Yeah, in my mind I was still, yeah.
It's a connection with a deeper self. So even if you're in action, working, doing things, that's coming through. And that's really the essence of flow. Flow is experiencing the stillness while you're in action. As opposed to just sitting and experiencing the stillness, in which case would be called a meditation. It's when you lose touch with that and your mind is busy. And there's lots of stuff going on in your mind, and you know that's what he's talking about, losing that inner stillness.
I woke up in the middle of the night, well, early hours of the morning, and I was doing a lot of thinking. I kind of knew I was thinking. I was noticing the thinking, but there was a lot of thinking, and I wrote a lot of to-do lists. And then I listened to one of your meditations and did some mindfulness, fell back to sleep for an hour, and then woke up a completely different person, you know, in flow, excited, you know, just energized. And the two, you know, when they were only like an hour apart or 2 hours apart from me, it was like, wow, you know, before, you know, if you didn't have any of these tools and didn't meditate and things, you could be in that busy state of writing lists and all the to-dos and just be totally in it for probably for months.
Your entire life.
Yeah, whole life. Yeah.
This is what happens with people, and there's no presence awareness of something else, and that's just the default pattern. And if they've been doing that for a long time, it's hard to break it because it's so habitual. Which is why the spiritual practices are needed. So just stop the pattern, interrupt it using the practice like meditation and so on. So you reconnect with the stillness, and then you carry that with you in your day. Even though you're busy this morning, you know, you carried the presence that you established in the morning with you.
I think one of the things that's helped me a lot is you explained one day about it being a bit like in a boxing ring with the ego. So you give it the right hook and the left hook, and you keep going until the ego lays down and goes quiet. And that stayed with me. And it's like, yeah, okay, so I've done some clearing and then I've done some meditation and it's still not quite yet. So I'm going to do some more and some more. And it's brought me a great deal of peace that I don't have to fix these things. I don't have to get back to peace now. It's just, I'm on my way there. I'm working my way through whatever it is that's come up or is very busy in me. Yeah, I really noticed that's brought a lot of peace. There's, you know, how we sometimes have subjects in our lives that are ongoing, like my dog. And it's like, oh, now I'm in no hurry to fix it because I know I just got to keep doing it. Keep doing clearings and journal on it and do whatever I want to do on it, mindfulness on it, and it's got better without me, you know, thinking about it.
Well, it's interesting. You remember I shared that talk by Simon Sinek on the infinite game.
Mm.
So what you're playing now is an infinite game. There's no finite outcome. You're saying it's a work in progress. There's no finish line here. But I need to do this by such and such a time. It's just a work in progress. Always, I'm playing the infinite game, which is to be who I am, to be happy and to be peaceful. And so there are going to be fluctuations in that, but I just keep practicing. Without this sort of finite outcome of the ego, which creates a lot of stress, it's like, well, it's okay. It's just, that's it. I'm just doing what I'm doing, and it's always a work in progress. And there's no need to stress. If I feel like I'm out of alignment, then I do something to move myself back in. And so it takes all kinds of self-imposed pressure off, because as soon as you put a deadline on something, I mean, even that word deadline, it's a thought system of death. It's a death wish. You're creating all kinds of stress that really isn't there. The infinite game has no deadline. It's infinite. You just carry on. So you're playing an infinite game within the illusion of time and space, which seems to be finite. That's the way out, isn't it? That's the way to infinity. If you start playing finite games, then it's very limiting and very restricted. And you can never attain infinity playing a finite game. It's not possible.
Deadline. Never heard it said like that before. Deadlines due to death.
A deadline. It's a death wish.
Yeah.
Just the. I mean, whoever invented that? A deadline. I mean, my God, talk about a word designed to inspire fear in people. If you don't meet your deadline, you're going to be dead. Oh my God. Maybe they did this in the business corporate world to like try and motivate people. You got to hit your deadline, otherwise you're dead. You're fired. But it's a terrible word, and it's a finite game you play. By such and such you have to hit your deadline. Otherwise, what? Otherwise, everything comes to an end, or disaster strikes, and actually, otherwise, probably not very much. So you miss the self-created deadline, and like life goes on anyway. Maybe with rare exceptions where, let's say you've got a major event and it's like, okay, it's happening at that time, and it has to happen then, possibly. But even then, you can just flow with it. Just go, well, it'll all take care of itself. If I do what I need to do, I just stay in flow. It's all going to just unfold. And the most important thing is I'll actually enjoy the experience. But if I'm stressing continuously about the outcome, I'm not going to enjoy the experience. If I'm not enjoying the experience, then what's the point? It's just being used by the ego. Situation being hijacked by the ego to create more dysfunction and pain and suffering. Okay, so that's a nice lead in. Let's if you read the first paragraph.
In today's quote, Eckhart Tolle points out that the connection between inner stillness and who you really are, your true self, beyond name and form. He also calls it the I am, which is one of the oldest recorded names of God, recorded in this passage from the Old Testament, 2,600 years ago, as the first name of God in the Bible revealed to Moses from a burning bush. God said to Moses, I am what I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you.
Because Moses has this profound experience. And then he says, well, who are you? What should I, you've sent me to go and rescue my people from slavery. What should I say? Who should I say sent me? And it responded as just the, this is the I am presence. I am what I am, or sometimes translated as I am that I am. And that was the original name, which is such a clear pointer to just beingness, to presence, isn't it? And yet it got overlooked. The Old Testament is really a story of a people's interaction with a conceptual imaginary God. that's not real. It's in their mind. And all of their projections onto that concept. Makes interesting reading when you read it consciously and you understand what's going on. But you go, oh my God, what is the ego invented? This crazy, vengeful, wrathful, fearful entity that seeming to want to control and punish and really not very nice. And that's just the projection of the ego. Whereas what revealed itself to Moses, interestingly, in a mystic experience, I mean, the burning bush must have been some kind of mystic experience. He saw a flame, maybe he was in an altered state, maybe he'd taken the drug, who knows? There was like, he had this altered experience where this voice then came in, and that's what it told him in his altered state. I am that I am. That's so the direct pointer into his own being, his own presence, not some conceptual God out there. But the Jewish religion at the time was very much based on the concept of God, and rather than the direct experience, as most religions are. So if you want to read the next in Hebrew, the passage.
No, you read that. I can't do all those Hebrew words. You do all the complicated words. You do the next 3 paragraphs, then I'll carry on.
All right. In Hebrew, the passage uses the verb eya. This is a form of the word haya. So you say haya when you're up. Haya. Well, there you go. It's actually the name of God, which is normally translated as I am or I will be. So according to theologians, that translation is in most situations adequate, but the meaning of God's name in Exodus 3 and several other places, apparently higher carries the added weight of representing God himself, which was then adapted into the traditional Hebrew name for God, Yahweh. So according to the same article, Yahweh is God's personal name, so closely identified with his being that many Orthodox Jews refuse to pronounce it, instead saying Hashem, which means the name, or Adonai, Lord, to guard this name's sanctity. And so there, I just included this to just show you how the original revelation of Moses in his mystic experience, very simple, direct, I am that I am, and you don't have to really confuse it, suddenly becomes very confused, doesn't it? Did you get any of that? Haya, Yahweh, now you've got multiple names going on for this single entity. God's personal name. God has a personal name? Right, that's very interesting. You see, it's just ego madness, projecting onto God what the mind understands as being real here. So God is like a person, has a personal name, and so we can't use this name because actually it's too direct. Well, what are you afraid of? Why don't you want to address it directly? You see the separation coming. So if you want to read the next one, there we see how the original revelation.
And there we see how the original revelation of Moses in his mystic experience, that God was the very essence of his and everyone's being, expressed as simply as possible in words as, I am what I am, has been denied, and God has become some external entity separate from the fundamentalists who believe in this conception of their own minds, that they must then defend instead of accept as their true identity that needs no defense, because it simply is. It's quite amazing that one man has one experience, and then here we are all this time later, using those words and still using that experience that he had.
Exactly. It's profound. Those altered experiences, mystic experiences, as they're called, are what we can learn from. Through the ages, it's timeless, it's universal. So, 2,600 years later, you're talking about this experience he had out in the desert where he saw a burning bush. And, hopefully learning something from it. So, it just shows you that the power, and how do you know that your mystic experience won't go on in time, and people in thousands of years won't be studying that. You don't know. Doesn't really matter. The point is that because it's an eternal experience, it's pointing to something that's eternal beyond time and space. It lasts, doesn't it? Nothing else would last. I mean, anything else of time and space from that time, you go, well, that's just hopelessly outdated. The laws, the customs, the politics of the day, the economic, it's all irrelevant now. But his mystic experience is still relevant to us because it's a direct pointer to the truth. That's universal and timeless. And then we can learn from. Unfortunately, it was recorded as in the Bible. So there's a record of it. And we now have a very powerful pointer to the name of God, to what God is. I am that I am. Don't try and dress it up in any other way. Just it's the very I am presence that's within you. And so even in the context, I mean, the Old Testament is traditionally associated with Judaism and a formal religion. Even there, you see these mystic breakthroughs that actually the people who are revered, like the Moseses and the Abrahams, and they did have mystic experiences. It was misunderstood, and then it got framed into this kind of quite rigid conceptual doctrine that became a religion. And then they have all this stuff going on with Yahweh and Hashem, and scholars study it and they argue about the name of God and what should be the name of God. It's ridiculous. It's like, actually, it's so simple. Go back to the original, the pointer that was given, the first name of God recorded in the Bible. I am what I am, or I am that I am. There it is, the absolute direct pointer. Don't fiddle around with the names and all this other stuff that the mind's invented. Just go directly there. It's your own I am presence. I am. I was asked at a transformational workshop to write down my essence identity. And the first thing that I wrote was I am. And interesting, the guy wouldn't accept it. The facilitator said, no, it's not complete. But actually, I would argue it's more complete than anything else. Because it's a direct pointer. I am. What else can you say? It's just the presence of the isness of being that is. And I am just, well, it's because there's no subject object then, you see. I am this, that's now subject object duality. Even I am love. I am love's a good pointer. But if you just say I am that I am, or I am, and you can use that, there's no conceptualization there possible. It's a direct pointer to your beingness. So it's actually the most complete and the most simple, because that's how it works. Truth is really simple. I used I am love, and I did have a powerful experience, because if I dug in my heels and said no, I am, I probably would have sat there all night, and the guy would have gone, okay, well, which defeated the point. The point was to go through the process. So I just exceeded. In the end, it's just words. The point was the words were pointing to a deep experience. But some words, like all this nonsense, Hashem and Adonai, it doesn't necessarily point you to the deepest experience. It points you away from it. Now you've got all kinds of other stuff going on in your mind, and God's got a personal identity, and all kinds of misconceptions come along with those pointers. So just use the simplest, most direct pointers. That point you to the truth of your own being, that needs no defense. I mean, it's ridiculous. Orthodox Jews refuse to pronounce the name of God because they want to try and protect it, to guard this name's sanctity. I mean, what ludicrous, like God has to be protected by you. You can't, say the name because what? But you see then the defense, the thought system of defense and fear coming in very clearly, which is all a separation from the truth of that God is in them. God is their being. God is who they are. So I just use it because it's really interesting to see how the truth is covered over. And anyone with really the eyes to see, who's had some kind of experience themselves, will interpret that that burning bush experience very differently from, say, a formal traditional religious person, won't they? They'll just see it in a different light entirely. That could be helpful rather than something that's just. I mean, when I learned the Bible in school, it was more like history, wasn't it? It wasn't like about, the altered state of God. It was like, okay, well, you're going to study it like a history lesson. And Moses did this, and he wrote the 10 Commandments, and that's how it was taught. Not, okay, well, actually, what the whole point was to point to another state of mind, another state of consciousness, which is fundamental, as Eckhart Tolle says. Why aren't we studying consciousness in schools? That's primary, that's foundational, that's without consciousness you can learn nothing else. So surely that should be the foundational subject. But of course it undoes the whole scientific materialist paradigm. So the kids really got it. They go, why am I even bothering with this stuff? Why am I bothering to learn all this crap when actually there's just the pure truth, and I don't need to learn any of this stuff. So it undoes the whole system. That's why they don't teach it.
And also those that are teaching need to understand it, or need to have had that experience and embody it to be able to teach it how it needs to deeply be taught.
So you'd have to have a school of mystics and gurus and saints teaching. And of course, they teach in another way. They teach adults and people who are ready to accept the message. So I mean, kids, I suppose on the level of form, they need to go through that experience. They need to kind of learn how the world works so they can kind of function here. And then in their later life, they have to learn to undo it. It seems crazy, doesn't it? So they're getting all like tightly screwed into the ego's thought system. And then later on, they're going to have to unwind all of that. But that's how it goes in an upside down world. So I watch my son, going through his learning, and it's like, well, I guess it's just that's what he has to do. You can't say don't go to school and don't learn your times table and don't learn about things like evolution and learning about the stars and the planets and all of this stuff, solar system and earthquakes, and that's part of the learning, which hopefully sooner rather than later he will then question and say, well, actually maybe not, maybe none of that's true. But right now, that's what he's got to go through. So you just have to kind of accept. And again, I suppose to refer back to your point about playing the infinite game. Well, that was my interpretation of your point. It's like, it's okay. That's just a process. Even if you seem to be going more into the ego, that's part of the process. And eventually, that's all part of this process of working out the ego and undoing it. So it's all okay.
I had one son who went through the school system and one son I homeschooled, and they both ended up thinking exactly the same. There's no difference between them. One just had more freedom to learn what he wanted to learn. The other one learnt what is, taught in that way. But it's amazing how similar they are, even though they've had completely different education.
Oh. Arrived at the same point. Well, I guess that's the point.
So it's going to happen, isn't it? Whatever happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. All roads lead to God ultimately. And part of this journey is just and being relaxed on the journey is just, well, okay, it's all okay. Holy Spirit's got it all, and it doesn't matter what anyone's doing. That's just part of their journey, and they will come back eventually. They will find their way back. Maybe you can help that and facilitate that, in which case you should, but because then that's part of the process of it unfolding. But you don't need to stress about it. It's like every single mind will find its way back to oneness. That's God's promise.
I used to have a lad that used to come here, and he used to go to a Steiner school, and so they were very much more liberated in their teaching. And then when he went to university, he found it very difficult to do what students do at university, the drinking and the hanging out and the late nights. And he was like, why are they doing it? That's ridiculous. So in some ways, to conform, to be able to, like you say, unconform is the process, or else, maybe he found it harder to integrate. I don't fascinating.
Each path has its own challenges. You say like, well, imagine if you awoke at the age of 7 or 8 or something. Like, how would you actually
Difficult,
function?
isn't it?
Oh, extremely difficult. That creates an enormous amount of difficulty, because you're going to be seen as some kind of difficult, special, probably diagnosed as autistic or something like that, and you just have no interest in doing anything normal. Like, why would you bother going to school? So my parents, I don't need to go to school. I'm awake already. So it's a process, all in good time, and you just have to surrender to that.
That's what my younger son used to say. You go, but why are they playing these stupid games, Mum? They pretend they're a cowboy or they pretend they're whatever. There's no answer to it, really, if he's just not in that space. It's just he could see through all the ridiculousness of life.
That does create its own challenges if you awaken. So let everyone follow their journey, and at some point in the end, the Holy Spirit's responsible. They will have their wake up call, and there will be a movement back to spirit and to unwinding it all. But maybe they had to learn it all before they could unwind it. Okay, so this kind, I want to read the next one. This kind of denial of truth.
This kind of denial of truth has been going on for a very long time in all the religions of the world, and is in fact why they have become formalized religions with dogma, which is just conceptual thought strongly believed in, rather than helpful pointers to the universal experience of God that Yeshua refers to in this quote. A universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary.
So he's telling us, it's not about theology, it's not about dogma, it's not about belief, it's about an experience that's possible and necessary, because that experience will point you to the truth.
Sometimes when I've had kind of mystical type experiences, nobody else gets it, do they? It's your own personal experience. And the one that keeps bubbling up to my surface at the moment while we've been talking is, I was just out dog walking, and it suddenly occurred to me that there's no suffering, that there's only love. But they're just words, aren't they? But the experience of it was so profound. There's absolutely no suffering. There's absolutely no suffering. It was like, wow. And you can't share that with anyone, because nobody gets it, do they? You have to be there.
No, because it's an experience. They'll say, well, you're a bit deluded, because you only have to, look at people's lives, turn on the TV, and you'll see suffering everywhere. So how can you say that? But because you had an experience of something beyond suffering. And unless someone's experienced that themselves, they're not going to understand. You listen to Yeshua talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he'd say stuff like, well, before Abraham was, I am. And they just go, what? What are you talking about? How can you have been before Abraham? Because they interpreted it in a materialist way. Oh, okay, but you're talking about linear time. And they didn't understand that actually he was pointing out of linear time to an eternal state of mind. Before Abraham was, I am. Well, because they didn't get it, because they didn't have the kind of experience that he'd had. So, welcome to the club. Mystics are not well understood by non-mystics. How could they be? Because it's an inner experience. They're often labeled as as weird, crazy, strange, disturbers of the peace, and then society tries to try and stop that, block that. We saw with Yeshua, well, they had to crucify him because he was just too dangerous. There's others, the other mystics who in history have been killed, burned at the stake, assassinated. So it goes, because people are scared of it. And they don't want to access that own dimension of their own being. So let's shoot the messenger instead. Okay, so you want to continue to have this universal experience?
To have this universal experience of God in as your own beingness, you must still your busy mind, what the Buddhists call the monkey or jumping bean mind, and enter into a different state of consciousness or awareness through what's called prayer in the Bible and meditation in the Eastern spiritual traditions.
Yeah, so it's a universal call to stillness, whether you do that through prayer, which is probably very similar to true prayer, is the same as meditation. It's a letting go of the thoughts and emotions that distract the mind, and it deepening into an inner experience. Remember, we talked about prayer the other day. It's true prayer for forgiveness or for letting go. So let go of the mind's busyness, the monkey mind, and go into a deeper, more peaceful state of mind, which is what meditation is. So there's no difference. Just different words to point to the same process, really. And that's what you start to see. I mean, I like looking at the language and saying, well, let's use the different terms so you understand it's all really pointing to the same thing. Prayer in the Bible, true prayer. It would say Jesus went to the top of the mountain and prayed. Well, he was meditating. And if he was in the East, they would have said he went to meditate. It's the same thing. He entered the same state, just a different term based on a different culture. He wasn't praying to God saying, oh God, please help me do this, and please do this. It was a communion. It was a letting go of the normal thoughts and a surrendering into a deeper state of mind or awareness. Okay, I'm going to carry on.
Whatever you call anything, the experience of connecting with the source or essence of who you really are remains the same, i.e. universal, something that is self-evident from descriptions of their inner experience by many mystics, saints, gurus, and holy men throughout the ages, who speak of an internal, ineffable presence within them that is beyond name and form.
Yeah, so ineffable actually means indescribable. You can't really put words to it. How can you? I mean, how do you describe some very deep, profound experience in words? They don't really do it justice. You can say things like, oh, I was in bliss, or that was just amazing. But I mean, does that really help anyone who's not experiencing it? Not really, because they haven't had the experience themselves. So that's the problem. You can't really describe it adequately in words to get people to understand. They have to have the experience themselves, which is why you have to journey this yourself. It's your own hero's journey and your own mystic experiences that will reveal the truth to you, and there's no other way. You can learn about the mystics and the saints and what they've done all you like, but eventually you must have your own experience that will validate theirs, and then you'll understand, okay, well, I now understand where they're coming from. It makes sense to me because I had that experience. And one experience like that, can absolutely profoundly change your life. It's extraordinary. Abraham Maslow called them peak experiences. One peak experience can profoundly change your life. Totally change the course of your life and what you do. I'll give you an example with Martin Luther. He had one mystic experience, and he was searching for the answer to this question of, how are we saved? He had this deep belief in sin and guilt planted by the Catholic Church, and he couldn't really get over that. And then he meditated on a verse from the New Testament, from Paul, saying, not by works, but by faith we are saved. And he couldn't really get his head around it. And he just kept at it. And then one night he just kind of broke through into another state. And he realized that actually nothing you do is gonna work. You can't make it right by good works. You have to let it go in your mind and accept that you're saved. By grace, you're saved. It just is. It's given. you might say, well, that's a pretty simple insight. But for him, that, being caught up in the depths of guilt and sin, that was profound. That was like a liberation from that Catholic thought system of guilt and sin. And based on that experience, he then wrote the 95 precepts of his treatise, and he hammered those onto the wall at the church in Wittgenstein, I think it was. And that kicked off the whole Reformation, where that very narrow conception of God and what it was about was challenged and overturned by him as the sort of driver of it. That came from his mystic experience. If he hadn't had that experience, he never would have done what he did. And that, profoundly changed the course of history, because the Reformation led to the Renaissance. It's just an opening in thought. There was so suddenly more openness came into the collective consciousness, and that was the precursor to the Industrial Revolution, which has now evolved into the society we know. So you go, well, how does one mystic experience change the world? Well, that's how it does. He had some mystics have a kind of a special path to follow where they're called upon to do this. Others of us, it won't necessarily be a world-changing event what you do, but nevertheless, the experience is profound for you. And who knows, maybe it will. You just don't know. If you guide it as they were, if you just listen to the voice that's guiding you, then you'll be called to do what you need to do, and you will be used by the Spirit for this process. Now, you look at that whole process of the Reformation, you can clearly see that the Holy Spirit's behind it. This whole process, this whole evolution of consciousness, it's all about moving closer to God. And that's been happening for centuries. So you can see very clearly the hand of God is in it all, and it happens through these inspired people who have these mystic experiences. That's how the world really changes. It doesn't change through the normal state of consciousness and the politicians and the princes and the kings and the popes of the day. No one remembers them, because there was nothing different. They were stood for the existing thought system. You remember Martin Luther because he stood for another way of thinking. It was really much closer to that one-ment, because he understood that ultimately sin and guilt are not real, and that you were saved by grace alone. You couldn't work your way towards this. You just had to accept that love was given you. You see, so there was an insight into truth there, moving closer to the truth, away from the illusions of the religious order of the day. And that you find most mystics do go up against the religious order of the day, and they're not very popular with those who hold to that order, because they deny it and they defy it. They say that's not true and that's not real, and they cannot but speak their mind. They can only speak their mind, because it's the calling of God, and they're not scared, so they'll just speak their mind, and then they get into trouble on that level of form. So then this is a quote from a Christian mystic called Saint Teresa of Avila, who was a 16th century Spanish noblewoman and a social celebrity. Apparently they had social celebrities in those days. So you can imagine, noblewoman, she probably had a busy social life, and quite all the prestige of a social position, and she gave it all up. It was obviously empty for her, and she just was called to go and become a nun, and went very deep into mystic experience, and so she's known as one of the Christian mystics, which is nice, because most of the time we quote men. So I thought, well, here we go. We have a woman who's a mystic, and there have been a number of them, and so that's what she had to say. Want to read that?
Prayer is an act of love. Words are not needed. Even if sickness distracts from thoughts, all that is needed is the will to love.
It's quite a profound quote. So, an act of love. Words aren't needed. She's saying it's an experience, and all you need is a willingness to love, even if sickness distracts from thoughts. So you've got dis-ease going on in your mind. There's all kinds of thoughts going on. all you need is the will to love. Okay, I'm willing to experience this divine love, this unconditional love. Again, an infinite game. All that's needed is the will. You just need to be willing. Yeshua reminds us over and over in the course, just be willing. Just be willing to keep showing up, to keep being willing to do the work. And you do that when you meditate. You do that when you do a course lessons and practice any of the teachings. When you join the live discussions, you're willing. And that's all that's needed, the will to love.
The Lynn McTaggart stuff where she does power of 8 circles, or they use that phrase, don't they? Power of 8. I guess that's an alternative to prayer, that people are just visualizing sitting with somebody in presence, seeing them well. And that's the same as prayer, isn't it?
Yeah.
They haven't got any resistance to that person, the other person in the group, being well. They're connecting the formless energy, and
and there's a letting go. All prayer is forgiveness. What are you doing? You're letting go of your misperception of sickness. That's what you're doing. So whether you call it prayer, you call it meditation, you call it forgiveness or letting go, it comes down to the same thing. There's one universal process through all of the spiritual paths and teachings that runs through it, whatever you call it, and that is letting go. You're letting go of an existing thought system, existing perceptions, emotions, everything, and opening yourself to another experience.
And that's what EAM is that I use, or several of us use. It's just a letting go, and we move towards the other experience.
It's all versions of the same thing, and all these tools are useful if they do actually accomplish letting go. If it's a tool that doesn't accomplish letting go and makes you more attached to this world and your existing thought system, then it's going in the wrong direction and should be discarded. But anything that's genuinely spiritual will have the element of letting go in it. You can see it in all the different techniques, whether you take breath work, meditation, prayer, contemplation, reflection, discussions like this. There's an element of letting go of what is the status quo, what you currently think and believe, and opening yourself to another experience through that process, whatever it is.
Yeah, I like how you put it all together. It's good.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's just guided, really, because what I want to do, the Holy Spirit wants to do through me, is to show people it's universal. It's not just the Course in Miracles. It's not just Buddhism. It's not in any single path. I mean, there's good paths and not so good paths that it will take you there quicker or not so quickly. But it's a universal truth. It's actually all the same. There's one truth. There's one way to get to the truth, and so see it universally, and then you get beyond the separation that religion creates, and you go, but it's all the same. Like I'm transcending the illusion of separateness and dogma and all the stuff that seems to separate people on religious grounds, and I'm just saying it's all the same. Well, whatever tradition people come from, there will be, if it's an authentic spiritual tradition, or even the religions that started off authentic and got twisted, there's still the truth there. It's just been covered over and hidden. And then there's no need to separate anymore. Well, this is the only way, and it's like, well, there's many ways, but there's a simple principle behind it. That principle is letting go. That's what's going to get you there. Whatever helps you to let go of your existing beliefs and perceptions, that's helpful. So that's what she's really saying is all you have to do to overcome the sickness of the ego's distracting thought system is to be willing to experience divine or unconditional love in prayer or meditation, whichever term you prefer. To put it even more simply, just keep meditating and you'll experience the perfect love for which you yearn. Just keep showing up and doing it. Just being willing, just being willing to love. Well, whenever you meditate, you're being willing to go into pure formless awareness of perfect love and experience it, aren't you?
Mm.
The meditation is a willingness to love. And so you start to see how it's all the same, isn't it? It's all, you start connecting the dots and saying all of these practices are ultimately the same, pointing to the same thing. And if I'm doing that thing, then I'm on the right track, and it's a done deal. I don't need to worry. If I'm not, you might have a little bit of readjustment through a teaching like this. Okay, well, maybe I get it. Maybe I need to meditate more, because when I meditate, do any kind of practice where you're contemplating, reflecting, quieting the mind, I'm being willing to love. That's what I'm doing in that moment, willing to experience love.
So yeah, that's good. Something's just dropped in.
Mm-hmm.
So all the inner work and being still is a willingness to reconnect with our true self.
Mm.
All illness is just a disconnection,
Mm.
resistance to being in that energy.
And your only response to any disconnection, to any temptation to disconnect, is to reconnect. So, okay, well, I'm just willing to love again. I'm willing to go there, and I'll do the meditation. I'll do the practice because I'm willing to love. I'm willing to allow the experience of love in, because it's already there. You don't have to really learn it. You just have to allow it in.
Mm. Yeah, that's good.
The spiritual practices are the way that you do that. Okay, you want to read the next one? So this is the Christ, or
this is the Christ, or I am presence, to be found in the stillness of your pure formless awareness of this perfect love, which, remember, is the translation for God in our alternative art of letting go language. Therefore, becoming still in meditation is the way to know God and your true self. To invite this experience.
Okay, so we're just into where we are now currently. So you're starting to see. I mean, I got to the same outcome through this whole process. But if you have a look at this, I'm just going to open the Holy Trinity diagram again. And you see how that all comes together. You've got the true self, or the Christ, the I am presence, which can then perceive the world differently. And this is where you'll find pure formless awareness of perfect love. Right? So that I am presence, by identifying with that and that alone, you allow the experience of pure formless awareness of perfect love, or God, to come into your mind. So it connects you with this ultimate experience, which is the mystic experience. Through an identity, an I am, you could call it the I am presence, you can call it the Christ, that is now helping you to have that experience, as well as to perceive correctly. The I am presence helps you to change your mind about the world, change your perceptions. So this, again, is the bridge between, it connects you, it reinterprets the dream, it can do that, and it connects you simultaneously with the source. So that's why it sits in the middle here. So we got to the same outcome through a different, this whole teaching, and you go, okay, well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. What's dropping in for me, it's like when somebody's ill, they're disempowered and they're as far away from God as possible. They're as disconnected as you can be. And with all the lower vibrations like depression and grief and whatnot, is all connected with that, isn't there? And then when you're doing the inner work and you're connected with source and you're feeling empowered and expanded, then you're in the higher frequencies and you're so much closer to the bliss and the peace. And yeah, I've got a kind of visual in my head, which is really helpful. Yeah.
It's just an awareness in the end, the frequencies and energy, and that's all helpful. But in the end, it's an awareness in your mind. That's all. which goes beyond energy work. It goes beyond chakras. It goes beyond everything else. Because you're going now to the very, very core of your own awareness, which is God. You know, that's that pure formless awareness of perfect love. That's God. Your own true awareness, your own true self, the I am presence, whatever you want to call it. Just realizing that is the whole point of this so-called human life.
So bizarre that we fight it so much, isn't it? You know, all the busy doing just to avoid love, just not be God or I am that we are. You know, it's quite bizarre, isn't it?
Well, it is totally bizarre because it's not who you are. I mean, yes, she was trying to teach us, but this is just a bizarre thought system. To deny who you are, believe that you're something that you're not, and invent an entire reality to justify that is just bizarre and insane and ridiculous, and needs to be let go of. So we live in a bizarre reality. It's crazy to have done this, seemingly done this, believe we've pulled it off, and now live in the apparent effect of what is insane and impossible. Welcome to the human condition. That's what we're doing. We think we're doing, and the only way out is to recognize that is what you're doing, with brutal honesty. Okay, this is what the human condition is about. There's no other plan. There's no grand plan. God didn't create this for some grand purpose. It was simply a mistake. We made a terrible mistake, seemingly. We departed from our true source, and we've invented a nightmare reality that really can never satisfy us, never fulfill us, never make us happy. And so the only solution is to let that all go. And that's why letting go, because that theory is the truth. That's why letting go works. Wasn't true, and letting go wouldn't work. But letting go does work, and that's why it's the essence of all spiritual practice. So then confirms that, okay, that must be the truth then. If letting go works, then the truth must be something else than what you believe. In fact, totally the opposite of what you believe. So it's not by degrees. You have to let go of all of it in the end. Suppose it is a process. You're not going to let go of all of it in one go necessarily, but ultimately you have to let go of all of it to be free. There's not one scrap of belief and separation left in your mind. That can seem to be a bit impossible and overwhelming, but that's what the Holy Spirit's power is. It will lead you to that belief again. And then you're free, and you no longer need to be here as human.
So not yesterday, the day before, when you were talking about how many negative thoughts do you have in a 24-hour period? And I used my dowsing sway thing. It was 1,000. And I let go of those 1,000, and then I was in flow, and then I had quite miraculous things have happened, and it's like, wow, that realization that subconsciously I was running these little patterns. They were only tiny little patterns. They were just, like you've said before, just going, oh, it's raining, or me, it was like, oh, that needs painting, and oh, the dog's just that. There's tiny little things that don't seem to matter, but they're recycled over and over and over and over and over again, and they're just enough to keep your vibe down.
They cover over pure formless awareness. In that moment, you've got something else going, and there's a contraction. If you're aware of it, there's a contraction in your being, and it's now covered over, and there's something else going on that doesn't feel that pleasant if you're aware of it. It's to be aware of the subtle ways that you do it, and just say no. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle just now, and he said, a great practice might help you is to say always, thank you for whatever's happening. Thank you, and I have no complaint whatsoever, irrespective of what's happening. Because that just neutralizes the ego that's judging and saying, well, that shouldn't be happening. Okay, well, thank you. Whatever's happening, thank you. I have no complaint whatsoever. Easy to do when things are going all right. But if things go, not so well, then not so easy. It's like your mind's going, but hang on, how can I accept that? I have no complaint whatsoever.
Yeah, I think I look at it from the point of view, there's something to learn here then. Or there's something else to let go of. And I love that feeling, like when you get lost in the ego, the coming home is really beautiful, coming back to love and peace. Made me go croaky saying that. So I know that when I'm in a tricky place where there isn't, real flow there, that I'm going to have that lovely feeling of coming home again. And kind of, you don't necessarily appreciate being home unless you've left home and come back again. So, I see it as a benefit, getting lost in ego in a way. I don't really want to be lost in ego, but if I am, I know there's a nice feeling at the end of it when I come home.
Yeah, this is a good, then you
Which
have no
is similar.
complaint whatsoever. So,
it's like being just like you said, it's like being grateful. I'm grateful for this experience because it's going to create a good feeling, and I'm going to be more grateful.
And not complaining. See, that's really to undo the complaining mind. Because if you complain, what are you doing? You're judging against reality. You're saying it shouldn't be that way. And now I'm going to verbalize it, which makes it doubly worse. So you've complained, and you've judged against reality, what the Buddha called aversion, which is another form of craving. You're craving for it to not be that way. Resisting what is, another way of saying it. And of course that doesn't feel spacious, and you're not in pure formless awareness. There's resistance, and there's a contraction in your being, and it feels like grit in the Vaseline or sandpaper. You're not in the experience of pure formless awareness of perfect love anymore.
And I used to have this resistance to other people being negative, but that's still resistance, whichever way you look at it. And I saw my brother yesterday, and he's of the mindset to see the negative in everything. And I was with him for a couple of hours, and my sister-in-law said, he's just so negative, isn't he? And I really didn't notice it. I didn't hear it. I didn't experience it. And realized, by letting go, I must have let that go. So that's not my experience in him anymore. I don't see him as a moany person anymore. So that's quite revolutionary, isn't it?
So even though he continues to complain, you don't notice it. So it doesn't really affect you.
And then I wasn't resistant to it. So it's all cool. We had a good time.
And then, therein, that's the practice of this. Saying change your perception. Change your perception, you change your experience. And irrespective of what's happening on the level of form, you can have a happy dream. Whereas the ego is saying, well, you can't possibly have a happy dream when your brother's around because he's such a moaner.
Yeah.
So now you're giving power to someone else in the dream to sabotage your happiness.
Oh, that's a good one.
To cover over the pure formless awareness of perfect love. You're giving someone or something else the power to do that whenever you complain. Why would you do that? And of course, the ego will never tell you that that's what you're doing. But if you're not experiencing pure formless awareness of perfect love, and you've experienced it, so you know what it feels like. If you're not experiencing it in that moment, then you've invented something to cover that over and justify another experience. That's why you have to be really vigilant for everything, because constantly we're covering that over inventing another, alternative awareness for ourselves that seems to be real
Mm.
and is not.
It's good when you point it out like that, because you kind of reframe it. Because I
Hmm.
realized something really good had happened, but when you put it into that I'd used him to sabotage my own peace, that's really interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed was it yesterday's lesson or the day before, the past is over and cannot touch me?
Hmm. Day before, I think.
Before was it? And so I noticed that I had a very deep, truthful conversation with him that we've never had to that level. And it just felt very aligned, very, very guided. And we talked about the past and cleared the air about things. And I thought, oh, it's that lesson. The past is over. That's worked its magic on me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm. And it literally couldn't touch me. It was really interesting. It was literally as the lesson was.
Hmm.
Mm.
And then you start to see, if you practice this and you apply it into your life and you see the result, you can't doubt it anymore. You go, this stuff works.
Mm.
So my faith is strengthened. A miracle like that happens on the level of form to show you that this works and that you're on the right track, and keep going, because what you're believing in doing is correct.
Mm.
And that's how you unwind your mind. Just keep practicing systematically and progressively to allow this experience of love's presence to come into your mind in the face of whatever the ego throws at you.
Yeah, and the other miracle with that experience was that I could love him unconditionally. I could really feel that absolutely no story attached, absolute unconditional love for him.
Hmm.
And it feels really strong. It feels like it doesn't matter what he says, doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't mean anything. It's just everybody wants unconditional love, don't they? Everybody wants that connection with it. And I'm pretty sure that he felt it while we were together, which is quite unique for him. So yeah, very cool.
And that now you're opening him to something else, and he might just go, that was interesting. I don't really understand that. But there's then an opening, if he wants to take it into something else. It might take him on a whole spiritual journey, or not. It's not up to you. It's up, that's between him and the Holy Spirit. But you've done your best because you were in that loving presence, to extend that to him and to show him that there's another way of being.
Yeah. He looked a bit stunned with it all. But I could feel the vibration in the room was very still and peaceful. We've never had that before, where everything stood still in the present moment with us. So
Yeah. So he would have perceived it and he would have gone, that was strange. I don't know what was going on. But there's an opening for him to take it further. It's, okay, well, I want to explore that. What was that? Or not. Maybe his ego comes back in and says, no, I'll cover that over and I'll just carry on because he's too scared. But the opening is there. This invitation is there for a hero's journey if he wants it. And so you did what you could have done in the experience. A lot of people sort of think, well, you need to be like a Yeshua who's like teaching the truth and he's healing people and it's like, to do God's will. But it's not. You just showed up and you showed him love, unconditional love, and you gave him an experience. And then it's up to him to decide if he wants, to explore that experience more. Okay, so that's our teaching done for today. Any more comments or questions on that? Or
only that when you were doing the essence statement, my essence statement is I am peace. And the difference between I am and I am peace feels massive to me. So what's the difference? I am feels really expansive, no attachment whatsoever. And then the I am peace, it's got there's a focus to it, isn't there? There's like a slight holding on to the word. So yeah, I'm with you with the I am rather than the I
Well,
am.
any term, any word, you're using a word to point to the infinite, which is problematic, because you're talking about what's infinite and unlimited and unbounded, and words are defined. Each word has a meaning, so there's a definition. So how do you point to the infinite with words?
Yeah.
Interesting problem, which every teacher, every spiritual teacher has had to try and work around that. And because how do you communicate but through words? But the words themselves are a limitation. This is exactly the dilemma that Yeshua had. I think he's done a pretty good job. The words do point you mostly beyond the illusion, beyond the limitation. But use, be conscious of it. Use as few words as possible. Actually, so you don't have to make it very wordy. I am. If I am will do, then use that rather than I am love or I am peace.
Yeah, I think I will now.
I am. Just I am. Because immediately you say that, what is it saying? You just are. It's an unquestioned beingness. You say I am love, then the ego goes, well, no, you're not love. Say I am. Well, the ego might say I am not, but that's ridiculous. Even the ego is going to struggle to believe that I am not. That doesn't really make sense. But I have an awareness, so I can't be I am not. I must be I am, you see. So it's interesting when you start playing with duality and non-duality in the words. And if you can go into like pure subject, I am is pure subject, rather than have an object in the sentence, then you're approaching the pure subjective mystic experience of truth that mystics like Saint Teresa and others have had. And if that word points you there, then use it. Okay, so let us have a look at how we're doing on time. Still got 45 minutes. So have a look at lesson. And there's a preliminary teaching as well on what is the real world. This one's called, which most people don't understand. So what is the real world? So let's hear what Yeshua has to say.
The real world is a symbol, rest of what perception offers, yet it stands for what is opposite to what you made. Let me just think about that. Real world is a symbol, yeah, like the rest of what perception offers, yeah. Yet it stands for what is opposite to what you made. You say something about that?
Yeah. What is opposite to what you made? So we made up the world.
Yeah.
He says your world is perceived through eyes of fear.
Oh, I see. So, all right.
Yeah,
All right. So we made the ego world, and the real world is actually source. Yeah. Okay. I was getting.
We've made up an illusory world that seems to justify fear. And we perceive it through the eyes of fear, brings the witnesses of terror to your mind. But this real world, you're still in perception. It cannot be perceived except through eyes letting go of blesses. So they see
confusing when you're saying like your world and the real world. Is like, which bit are we talking about?
Well, your world, yeah, he's talking about your being you as the separate self, the ego.
Okay, and the real world is spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, and the real world is the world of illusion, of form, but reinterpreted with the help of the Holy Spirit. So it cannot be perceived except through eyes letting go blessed. So they see a world where terror is impossible. Witnesses to fear cannot be found. So the negativity, let's say as a practical example of that, the negativity of your brother didn't really affect you because you just didn't see it. You realize it's actually impossible.
So I was looking, it's like looking through it, real world.
Looking beyond, looking beyond it.
The ego world just looks, it's not, even saying it's not real feels too real. You're just looking through.
It's not there. You see, that's the whole point. It's not there. You just overlook it. It's not even there for you, even though on the level of form it's being demonstrated. He's acting out that thought system by complaining or expressing whatever negativity is coming to his mind. You just you realize when you're being guided by this Holy Spirit that's just not true. The terror is impossible. There is no fear. Negativity in any form doesn't really exist. And if it shows itself to you in the dream, you just don't believe it. That's all. So the real world is the world reinterpreted. With the help of the Holy Spirit, rather than the ego. Still within perception. We're still talking about a perceptual world, but there's no fear. All the edge, all the negativity has been taken out of it. It's like the world cleaned. Your perception's cleaned it, and now you just see the pure formless awareness of perfect love shining through everything and everyone.
Very cool.
Very profound. Your experience of the world, if you're in the real world, is so different from the other world, the ego's world, that you go, how can they even be the same world?
I notice since been doing the program with you that there's some that's very revealing of me. Okay, I'm gonna say it anyway. There's some people that I absolutely love unconditionally, and they can do no wrong in my eyes. Whatever anybody said, or they might be neighbors, they might be people that work for me, just random people, and I feel absolute unconditional love. And I've not really recognized that before, that you can unconditionally love your own children and people close to you, but just random people that you don't really know deeply, I find that really interesting, that it's such a strong feeling that I've just really noticed recently. That it is a different sort of feeling altogether. It's like you can't really call it love. It's just that, namaste, isn't it? It's like seeing the pureness of somebody.
Well, that is the only thing you can call love. This is saying, the only love that is true is God's love. That's divine love. Anything else is not worthy of the name. It's just a false substitute for that. So any kind of attachment, any codependency, when there's any negativity, it's coloring the relationship. That's not love at all. So in the real world, you see only love, and you can only unconditionally love. Your one state of mind, your one kind of constant state is unconditional love, because you're not judging anymore. You're not seeing the negative anymore.
So if there's anybody in the world that I don't unconditionally love, or I'm using them as a focus not to love, then there's something there that's triggering me that I need to let go of.
Yeah. So it's not them or the world that needs to change. It's your own mind.
Yeah, sure.
Your perception about them needs to change, because then you can free yourself. So it's so simple, really. You think, well, why do we struggle with this so much?
That's funny.
Such a simple teaching, but it completely undoes the world as you know it. The normal, egoic world is completely undone, and it simply doesn't exist anymore. if you start to do this.
There was a time a few weeks ago where I went through everybody that I knew to see if there was anybody I didn't unconditionally love, and then I did an instrument of peace on them to clear that. But I think there's levels of understanding to that, isn't there? Like, I feel like I need to do that again. I need to have another spring clean, and what else has occurred since then?
Yeah, so you use your relationships as spiritual practice. You go, is there any thought, any emotion in there that's not unconditional love? Okay, if that's the case, then I need to let it go.
So it's an opportunity. It's really a good opportunity.
Yeah, to see that. You see it through the relationship, and then you use that to, apparent obstacle or block to the awareness of love's presence, to clear your mind, restore your mind back to the state of unconditional love.
Because in the energy where if I don't unconditionally love someone, there's definitely some fear in there.
Always, yeah. And there'll be a desire to be separate, to maintain the separation from them.
Yeah, to avoid me.
And then you're avoiding your own I am presence.
Yeah. Avoiding the part of me that I don't like. I'm resisting. Yeah.
Whereas if nothing triggers you, then you just are in pure formless awareness. Nothing can affect that. So again, the illusion of the world allows you to become aware of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence and let them go as they arise. It's quite useful. More than quite useful. It's the whole way out. That's your way out of the dream world. Just by doing that process of reinterpreting the projections.
Yeah.
Okay. So happy with that. Let's move on to number 2. So the real world holds a counterpart.
The original or the alternative?
Where are we?
There is an alternative too, is there?
No, there is. Just mixed up the. Got the order wrong. There we go.
The real world holds a counterpart for each unhappy thought reflected in your world, a sure correction for the sights of fear and sounds of battle which your world contains. The real world holds a world perceived differently through quiet eyes with a mind at peace. Nothing but rest is there. There are no cries of pain and sorrow heard, for nothing there remains beyond letting go. And the sights are gentle. Only happy sights and sounds can reach the mind that has released itself. Okay, the thing that comes up for me is, so if I was with somebody that was maybe dying and in pain, if I'm in the mindset of unconditional love, that won't be so apparent to me. It won't trigger me, I'm guessing. So that's really powerful, isn't it? That you can be with somebody in pain, not feel the pain and not respond to the pain, not even see it as pain. That's really fascinating, isn't it? I know that's kind of obvious, but
that's what he's saying. There are no cries of pain and sorrow heard. Well, nothing there remains beyond letting go. So you don't perceive pain. A lot of people will say, "Oh, that's not very kind," or that's not very sympathetic. It isn't. Sympathy is going into the pain and making it real with the person. That's not really helping them.
So what about an empath then? So somebody that feels other people's pain is just an unhealed healer type person?
No, if you're really feeling it and it's affecting you, which, as I understand, it does. with empaths, they really feel it deeply, then they're not in pure formless awareness of perfect love, are they? They're feeling the pain, and they've been pulled in to that other person's pain, which isn't helpful at all. So now I've been accused of being emotionally insensitive, but I'm like, but I don't go there. It's not real. So how can I be sensitive to what's not real? You see the problem. The dilemma is like, and you have to hold to the higher state of just saying, well, it's not true and it's not real, so I remain unmoved, and I'll try and be helpful to you to try and move you out of whatever pain, sorrow, illusion you're in, to the truth. But to join you in your pain is can't do that, because it's not true. It's not real.
Some people that are insensitive have cut off their feelings, haven't they? So they do seem numb and uncaring. But what you are obviously showing is a kindness and a love, but it's interpreted as insensitive. But actually what I feel from you is deep kindness and deep care. And so it's interesting, isn't it, how the human would perceive that as insensitive.
Yeah. Well, the ego would obviously have to perceive it as insensitive, because it wants the sympathy. It wants someone to play the game. So it's like, oh, you haven't played my game, therefore, you're insensitive, or not unfeeling or uncaring, or all of this kind of stuff. It doesn't actually want that unconditional, like, presence that's just saying, well, this isn't true or real. I can't believe it, because that invalidates its whole story. And so it gets very uncomfortable, and then it defends itself. And then you get, and these two thought systems don't mix at all. So you're not necessarily going to win popularity contests, certainly not with people who are rooted in the ego, if you do this. But then you're not, if egoic people like you, then you've got a problem. You really do. Because why do they like you? They should be like, oh no, absolutely, don't like this at all, because it's the opposite. They're not going to like what's going to undo the ego. And so you see this duality in stories of people like Yeshua, maybe the Buddha. It's like people either love them or hate them. There was either a really strong connection and people would follow them to death, as disciples in his inner circle. Or you got these, the people really rooted in the ego, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who were intent on killing him. They were like, we've got to get rid of this guy at every opportunity. They hated him because they were so uncomfortable in his presence. He brought up stuff that they weren't willing to look at in themselves. And he wasn't scared to say, well, sorry, that's not true and that's not real. And he's highlighting for them the falsity of their thought system. They didn't like it at all. So then, shoot the messenger.
Because I never feel any loss or grief. If somebody dies, I don't. And if somebody, I don't know, lose a friend or something, I just don't feel there's any loss in me.
Oh.
And that can be deemed.
Well, you don't care then. People think that caring is feeling the pain. Oh, you don't feel the pain with me. Oh, you don't care. But this is all just ego distortion, isn't it? It's like, well, you've got a distorted thought system that somehow thinks that caring and love is suffering and pain. And that to join me in my pain is to care about me. Like, how confused is that? How can pain be caring?
Yeah, I used to have it when I was married. That was a bit of a conundrum. That if my husband was in a bad place, he'd want me to be in a bad place with him to keep him company. So when I decided that I wasn't going to do that anymore, then that was the end. Because he was like, well, you don't understand, he's anxious or depressed or whatever, and I'm just in my happy place. And it's like, well, no connection there at all.
Well, because that thought system that makes people unhappy and sad and all the negativity, you just like, no, it doesn't even exist. So if you're attached to that and you want me to join you in that, I can't. Sorry, it's not going to happen. So then that person would perceive that as uncaring,
Mm.
and you don't love them. But like, what are you loving? There's nothing to love there. You can't love that. How can you love a death wish? Because that's what it is. So this can bring an end to special relationships, because it's just like the one person is moving in a direction the other one doesn't want to go, and it's like, well, these are totally incompatible thought systems. They don't agree at all on anything. How can you live with someone when you don't agree with them at all on anything? Very difficult. So they can join you. You're inviting them to join you. The miracle worker would do that, but if they don't, and they can decide for the ego, that's their prerogative in this illusion. Then how do you relate? Very difficult. No, you don't, and that's okay. It's not like you did the right thing. So okay, well, that's it then. I can't join you there, and to remain in that relationship would have hampered your spiritual growth. So you left, because that what are we here to do? We're here to learn the truth. That's all. Nothing else. You're not here to have a relationship with a specific person. You're not here to achieve anything on the level of form. You're just here to learn the truth of who you are. So if something's not serving you in that, then let it go. Move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2, any other thoughts on that?
No, that was enough.
Yeah, it's interesting discussing this. You see what comes up just from these simple words.
What crossed my mind was, I don't watch the news, because it's like, oh no, don't take me down. And but naturally the practice can be to watch the news and clear and
watch the news as a spiritual practice, and go, can I just watch and be completely unmoved? Apparently David Hoffmeister would watch horror movies and he'd laugh. He'd just be laughing. He'd be like, that's so ridiculous. I can't even, the ego's like big, bad, scary. Ooh, and he's just like, that's just, I can't take that seriously. There's no fear. It just doesn't make it real. It just becomes a ridiculous, caricature of a thought system. It's crazy. So, you can do anything from that perspective. Try it. Maybe you don't do it every night, but like try it one night and just go, okay, well, I can just watch this playing itself out, and see the, I mean, isn't it just watching the news every night? That's a great expose of the ego. It's like there you're seeing the ego in so many different facets. Well, what great mind watching. Just go, okay, can I look on all of this and just be unmoved and realize it's unreal? What I'm seeing is a complete fantasy and a hallucination, and none of it is true and none of it's real. Again, if you voice this to someone who's not awakening, they're going to think they're likely to feel personally insulted. Oh no, you need to know about this stuff. It's really important. Really?
Yeah, that's what everyone says. Yeah.
It's really important to know about all these illusions that are only designed to sabotage your peace and happiness. Okay, if you say so. Because they can't accept that it actually means nothing. None of it means anything. It's all just a load of rubbish. That's too threatening for the ego to contemplate that. So they choose to believe in it instead. And then, how can you be happy and joyful when you're seeing chaos and carnage and madness and sickness and death all the time? I mean, no wonder people are depressed. It's amazing people are even vaguely sane in this world.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't think they are. I think it's just all repressed. It's like they suppress it and they kind of carry on as though everything's okay, but there's this deep anxiety. and a deep sense of meaninglessness and purposelessness, and like, why am I even here? And people cover that over, and they busy themselves with their lives and doing things in the world to try and cover that over. And they don't really want to face that feeling, because if they really faced that feeling, then they could undo it, you see. If they really went and, well, it actually is meaningless and pointless. And I really experienced that, depression and the meaninglessness and the pointlessness of it all. And it's really horrible. It's not a nice feeling. But if I'm willing to go there and then go beyond it, then there's laughter. You just got to laugh at it. Go, that's just ridiculous. How could I have taken any of that seriously? And then there's a kind of what Yeshua describes in the development of trust as a happy lightheartedness instead. It's just like, well, okay, none of that really means anything. I don't need to pay attention to it. I don't need to know about it. I'm free, and then you become a free person in a world of illusion. And of course, people are not free. I'm not going to get you. In the cave, that cave, Plato's cave analogy, Socrates comes back having seen the light, and he's gone out the cave, and he's trying to tell him and say, guys, there's this whole other reality. Come with me, there's, and they don't want to know. They beat him up. We don't want to know. Don't tell us there's something else. We like our cave, and we like our images projected onto the screen, and we like our chains. We don't want to be free. So Jesus, said, don't cast your pearls before swine, as a way of, I think it was to try and protect his disciples and say, look, just don't go and teach people who are going to not appreciate it, because they're likely to hurt you. Just teach people who are open to this, where there's a willingness to open to another way of thinking. Spend your time and energy there rather than trying to convert people who are so wedded to their thought system that they're just going to think you're mad and probably try and attack you. Okay, next one.
That was quite mind-blowing. Okay.
Amazing what's these. I really like these inserts. So there's some really deep, profound stuff in them.
What need has such a mind for thoughts of death, attack, and murder? What can it perceive surrounding it but safety, love, and joy? What is there it could choose to be condemned, and what is there that it could judge against? The world it perceives arises from a mind at peace within itself. No danger lurks in anything it perceives, for it is kind, and only kindness does it look upon.
Again, I mean, what he's pointing to here is mind-blowing. You only see peace. There's no danger. There's no fear in the world. Only kindness does it look upon. Like, how is that for someone who's rooted in fear? That's inconceivable. Such a different state of mind from the normal fear-based perception. And so be aware of these little smidgens of fear that are still there, where I'm perceiving any kind of danger. What he's saying, no, there's no danger. No danger lurks in anything it perceives. It's pretty categoric. It's not saying, well, in some instances, I've heard even, Eckhart's a great teacher, but he'll say, oh, well, sometimes in 90% of cases, fear is not justified. No, Eckhart, in 100% of cases, fear is not justified. It's either it's an all or nothing deal here. You can't justify some of it. It's all not justified. So, well, if you have like a tragedy or someone's died, then maybe. But no, it's irrespective. It doesn't matter. Because the truth is true and nothing else is true. But if he started teaching that way, he might lose a lot of followers because it's non-dual and it's pure non-dual. Whereas his teachings kind of, there's a bit of duality in it, and he does a good job of bringing people, I think, into a spiritual, more of a spiritual mindset, and introducing them to some of these ideas and concepts. But if you want to go the whole way, you've got to go beyond that. You've got to go, okay, well, we're going the whole way here. And of course, the Miracles will take you there, because it's a pure non-dual teaching. So these kinds of statements, no danger lurks in anything it perceives, for it is kind and only kindness does it look upon. Pure non-dual, just pointing to a singular reality where there is no fear. Which is, to the ego terrifying, but to your spirit, it's like, oh, hallelujah. Someone's actually telling me I can get out of all of it. There'll be no fear, no pain, no suffering, no sickness, no death. All of it's going to go. Oh, I'm totally free. Thank God. So what need of such a mind for thoughts of death, attack, and murder? Indeed, like what's the point of any of those thoughts? You realize there is no point. Only safety, love, and joy are real. Okay, any thoughts on number 3?
Well, the thing that's crossing my mind is the reason the dog is such a good teacher for me is because it touches me in that fear place, loss or fear of suffering. Like she started limping this morning, and it just triggers me, and I have to do some work on it. And actually, I'm seeing a new viewpoint, that I'm seeing that it's possible to be with her and not, there's no suffering, that there's no pain, it's just me. I mean, I knew that, but it's just, it drops in deeper, doesn't it? That it's just the pain in me that needs letting go of.
Oh, exactly. And that's all you can do. And that's the best way to help her. You drop your own pain body, as Eckhart would call it, and that can only help her because she's connected to you. So it would help her not to suffer as much.
Yeah,
she's going to die. She's going to die at some point. You know that. So
I know. You could tell.
Can she go peacefully? Can it just be a
but that's the key. That is the key. So the last dog I had took 2 weeks in its last phase of dying, and I couldn't understand why the dog couldn't just die naturally. Why could it just not let go? And then I'm sure I've let go. I'm sure I've let go, and obviously I hadn't let go. It was 2 weeks of real discomfort, and I'm really scared. I'm really scared to go through that again, and that's why I get triggered by the dog being unwell.
Oh. So it's your own stuff, you see. It's your own fear.
I know it's mine.
But if you apply this, no danger lurks in anything it perceives, for it's kind and only kindness does it look upon. There are no thoughts of pain and suffering. Only happy sights and sounds. A great lesson. Death, attack, and murder. I mean, that's the thought of death. You're seeing something dying.
Yeah, and the one before, what was the one before, number 2? Can you just slide up a bit?
No cries of pain and sorrow.
There's no cries of pain and sorrow. So the old dog, when it was dying, it howled so loud, and it kind of went right inside of me. And it's the fear of feeling that again.
What you should be saying is, bring it on. Bring it on.
All right.
If that happens again, because then you get the opportunity to correct the previous error, you see.
Yeah.
And so then that's all happening for you if that happens again.
Well, I'll clear it before it happens. I'll clear it now.
So why resist it? It's like, okay, well, great. What great spiritual practice. That if that happens, then that's happening for a reason, and that's in fact your dog's gift to you. It's trying to free your mind from the misperception of pain and suffering and sorrow, and awaken you. Well, what a great gift. That's perfect in its imperfection.
I know she's been working at it very hard.
So there's your, if it triggers you, then okay, I still must believe in pain and suffering and sorrow and sickness and death if I'm getting triggered.
Yeah, I am with her. Yeah. I
So,
believe in her. No one, lots of others, no, don't believe it in all that.
no, that's
I
yeah,
believe
but
in her.
isn't it interesting? So the special relationship is exactly where we can learn the most, because in that special relationship we get triggered.
Mm.
If you can be aware of that, okay, this is a great learning opportunity here.
Mm.
Because you're emotionally invested in it. There's some special attachment which is not love between you and the dog.
Mm.
And so then it gets to you. Then these what is not love can then penetrate through where it can't in other instances, because there's no special attachment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So remember, the ego's response to the Holy Spirit, Yeshua says, was to invent the special relationship. The Holy Spirit was given an answer to the separation, and the ego said, "Oh, well, that won't do. So we've got to have a strong counter to that, and that is the special relationship, because it seems to be love. You see, it's a deception. That seems to be love, but it's not love. It's actually fear and suffering and hatred and sickness in disguise, heavy disguise, because it seems to be love." And so it's an imposter that the ego is holding up to you and saying, "Well, come, I'll give you love." And most people fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. Oh yeah, special love. Everyone's looking for it, aren't they, in this world? Whether it's from another person, a dog, a substance, whatever. Special. I'm in love with this particular thing. And the ego's saying, "Oh, great. As long as you're doing it, great. We got you." And it'll tell you that it's love, and it'll dedicate ceremonies to it. And we have things like Valentine's Day, and there's no, this is good. This is love, and it's not at all. It's actually a denial of love. So again, don't expect popularity to win popularity contests when you point out to people their delusions and say, "But it's not love at all. In fact, you hate it. By being specially attached to anyone, you're hating them, not loving them." Whoa, that's a bit radical for the ego to accept, isn't it? Whoa. So by being specially attached to your dog and not forgiving and letting go, you're actually hating her, not loving her. Just think of that. You're not helping her at all. How can you ease her transition into pure formless awareness if you're actually hating her? I'm just saying I'm being provocative in my language, but
No, I'm hearing.
Think about it, because it's like, well, what am I actually doing here? Do I really love my dog? Well, if I love my dog, then I would just let go. I'd just apply this teaching and let her go, and there's no response to the cries of pain and sorrow and suffering, because none of that's true. The essence of your dog is not that. That's her ego. That's the delusion. We go, but animals are innocent. No, they have karma too. They chose to be separate. The ego is everywhere. Anything that incarnates into form has an ego. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in form, would it?
Good point. Yeah.
So they have chosen, in the same way we have, to incarnate. They've chosen separation, and then they must suffer the consequences of that, which they do. And the dogs are great teachers because they die so quickly. They die in 10 years or 15 years. So it's like the illusion of some kind of prolonged life. In human life, it's 80 or 90 years. But with dogs, it's like so quick. We see their life playing out before our eyes, and then it's over. And we go, well, why couldn't it last longer? But it's a great teacher to go, well, that's how it all is. Just with dogs, it's happening in 10 years or 15 years. With humans, it seems to happen in 80 or 90 years. But there's no real difference. It's the same. Everything is impermanent. So, let me use it as a great learning. Don't attach to anyone. Why would you give value to what is valueless, says Yeshua? Why would you believe that loving that dog over divine love is going to give you anything? When the outcome is obvious. You especially attached to the dog, you are going to suffer. It's inevitable. So why would you do that to yourself?
When you put it like that, it sounds mad.
It is. It's like, well, why? Why would you do that? You're hurting yourself. Which is what Yeshua is saying to us. You're hurting yourself. It's like you're bashing your head against a brick wall, hurting yourself, and then going, no, it's not me, it's the wall. That's the problem. But it's not the wall that's the problem. It's you who's the problem. Always you, because who has the intent to bash their head against the wall? You do. And the brick wall is the world we've invented of time and space and duality. But you don't have to bash your head against it. You can just go, the wall's not even real. I can go around the wall. I can go under the wall, over the wall, around the wall. I can even, at the highest level, go through the wall, which has been known in some of the monasteries. They found the people who are kind of in the walls, bones in the wall. How did they get there?
Really? Oh, I hadn't heard that.
One wonders. Well, they had this mystical practice of going through things, and then maybe they kind of got stuck there. They didn't quite have the skill to get right through, so they got stuck in the wall. Who knows? But spiritually speaking, just the wall doesn't exist. There's no wall. How can you bash your head and hurt yourself against a brick wall that doesn't even exist? Not even there.
Yeah.
Just reminding yourself of that when you're tempted, when it's showing you, the very hard, cold brick of the ego with death, attack, and murder. When it's showing you that, you go, it's not even there. That Pink Floyd song, just another brick in the wall. And it's a classic song because they're highlighting the illusion, aren't they? We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. What were they highlighting? Right? The system of education is a prison. It's another brick in the wall against which is imprisoning you. What's a wall a symbol of? It's a symbol of, well, this is keeping you in prison. It's that you can't go beyond the wall. You can hurt yourself on a wall. It's hard, it's fixed, it's solid. Why put another brick in the wall? And you can just let the idea of the wall go entirely. There is no wall. When you start to get this, you can only laugh, can't you? Like, how can I hit my head against a wall that doesn't even exist? How's that even possible?
Oh my God.
Am I blowing your mind again?
I used to love listening to that song. Yeah. No, I realized it was about education, but you've just taken it a step forward, haven't you? That the wall doesn't exist. Yeah.
When they were talking about, the system of education, but actually on a bigger level, that system of education is just symptomatic of the entire ego's thought system. It's brainwashing us into believing that this world is real. Because it starts with the education, and then having been educated in illusion, you then go and you become a citizen of this illusory world. And you play by the rules because that's what you've been educated to do. And the ones that question that are seen as crazy and mad, and you're dangerous and you're radical and you're revolutionary, and we've got to somehow stop this, because the ego doesn't want you to awaken from its prison and question the whole thing. But thank goodness we live in a time now where we can. Fortunately, no one's going to stone you or crucify you for doing this. They might think you strange and odd and they don't want anything to do with you, but you can do this work and you can broadcast it live. I mean, this is being broadcast live to the world. Anyone who wants to watch this can. So we're very fortunate. That wasn't the case for most of human history. If we were having this kind of conversation even 100 years ago, maybe not 100, but so, in the Middle Ages, you would have been stoned, burnt at the stake. It would have been like, well, these people are devil worshippers. They need to be done away with. Certainly excommunicated from society, but mostly they burnt them at the stake. for just believing in anything alternative. I'm sure you've been there. That's probably, part of the karma.
Yeah.
We've all done it. It's like, oh, because in 500 years ago, you've been called a witch, wouldn't you?
Yep.
You've been like, dangerous. We've got to burn her because it's, against the status quo, which is represented by the church. And very dogmatic, set, fixed ideas about reality. And anyone who questioned it was just burnt or stoned or whatever. So we're very fortunate. We live in a world where at least, we don't have to deal with that. We can express our opinion freely. And all the tools are there for awakening. You can read the Course in Miracles. You can discuss it online. And, that's a huge progress in human consciousness. That whole evolution we talked about with Martin Luther, that all had to happen to allow this to happen, to allow this time to come where actually there could be a mass awakening, where millions of people, not just a few, but millions could get this and awaken to who they really are. And I think that's what we're in. That's what's happening, which is kind of quite exciting, really. It's all an illusion. It's just a dream, but that's about the most exciting dream you could have.
Mm.
And there we go. That segues us nicely into the real world as a symbol. That the dream of sin and guilt is over.
The real world is the symbol that the dream of sin and guilt is over, and the perfect love's extension no longer sleeps. His waking eyes perceive the sure reflection of his source's love, the certain promise that he is redeemed. The real world signifies the end of time, for its perception makes time purposeless.
So the extension is his. Its waking eyes perceive the sure reflection. So we'll make it an it rather than a certain promise that is redeemed. So it's a done deal. He's saying it over and over. This is a done deal.
Yeah.
Just accept it, and then you will see the real world.
Mm.
Perception makes time purposeless. You realize, well, there's no point. So let's get this over with. Let's just end it. That doesn't mean you commit suicide straight away. It just means in your mind, it's over. The game is over. The dream is over. Now you become the awakened one in the dream who is able to help people here and fulfill the only function you really have while you're here. To help others to awaken to this same knowledge. Okay, any thoughts on number 4?
No.
We've got another 9 days of this. So.
I quite like this one. This is cool.
Yeah.
The remembrance of perfect love has no need of time when it has served its purpose. Now it waits just one more moment more of pure formless awareness of perfect love to take its final step, and time has disappeared, taking perception with it as it does, and leaving but the truth to be itself.
I'll make that capital.
That instant is our goal, for it contains the memory of perfect love. And as we look upon a world released, it is this presence that calls to us and comes to take us home, reminding us of our identity, which our letting go has restored to us. Yeah, it all comes back to letting go, doesn't it? But there's such a deep raft of stuff to let go of that I didn't even know existed. So yeah, lots of opportunities to let go.
Well, that's the beauty of the world. It gives you constant opportunities to let go of this belief system that is enslaving you. And that's the real world. The real world is the world interpreted with the eyes of letting go, saying, okay, this is all just an opportunity for me to let go and restore my mind to its true home. to free myself. So it's all good. Bring it on, like whatever. Pain, suffering, sickness, death, dogs dying, dogs in pain, dogs howling. It doesn't matter. Bring it on, because it's all the opportunity for me to free myself. And that's the only reason I'm here. So I can't lose. I mean, this attitude, you're playing the infinite game, aren't you? You cannot lose. Because whatever's thrown at you, you go, well, I just reinterpret it. And if I just keep doing that systematically, progressively, I will be awakening, and it's a done deal. So Yeshua's trying to say to her, look, this is so easy, actually. What I'm telling you is just apply this and you'll free yourself. It's a done deal. You can't go wrong if you just listen to what I'm saying. And don't twist the message. Don't start going, oh, well, actually, he doesn't really mean what he says. He doesn't mean to let go of everything. There's certain illusions that I can hold on to. No, he means you've got to let it all go. There are no exceptions. And the temptation to make exceptions is the ego's temptation. So any thoughts on number 5?
Let go of everything. That's another one of the things I've learned during this program, that I used to think I used to use the phrase, everything is energy. And I thought everything meant everything. But now I see everything is just a thing, an ego illusion. When you're letting go, you're just letting go of the ego illusion. Came through that the wrong way. But I used to think everything was a thing. Everything was energy. But now I don't see that, because we're going towards beyond energy into a state.
Energy is illusion.
Yeah.
Energy shifts and changes. Energy is continuously in flux. It's changing. So it's part of the illusion.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, but I couldn't get the words right.
Energy is projected thought. It's the thought of the ego projected outwards, now seemingly taking form as whatever form of energy it seems to be. A person, a house, a car, an animal, a star. It's all illusion, just projected thought. False thought projected outwards. So energy is not true. So you're going here beyond that, all of those concepts, into pure awareness, pure formless awareness, the awareness before energy, before there was a need for energy, just pure awareness, nothing else. Pure formless awareness of perfect love. Before time and space and energy were born, there was no need for time, space, and energy in pure formless awareness. It's complete and whole unto itself, and it still is. So this just collapses all the other spiritual teachings and energy work, and it just transcends it all. So it's just go to that fundamental awareness where there's nowhere else to go there, right? You can't go beyond that, because that's it. That's God. That's the source. That's fundamental awareness. If you stop before that, then there's still a journey to be followed to get there. In the end, we will all go back to that fundamental awareness, to that source. And that's the universal program that's been guided by the Holy Spirit, that's playing itself out in the dream. If you accept it, then your life's just so much easier. Okay, that's the program. That's what's actually happening here. That's the overriding function and purpose and meaning of this world. Okay, well, if I align myself with that, my life becomes so much easier. If I don't see that and I give it all kinds of false purposes and meanings, I'm going to suffer until I do accept that that's the only purpose and meaning. And then you can kind of come alive. It's this bizarre, like I'm letting go of the entire world, but I actually come alive. And I'm quite inspired, even though I realize it's all just a dream and it's ridiculous and an illusion. Because I'm now believing in eternal life, that eternal life is coming through and saying, okay, so we have a live one here. Someone has actually woken up to this. So let's use this as a channel in the dream to perpetuate itself, to awaken people to it. And that's all. That's the only reason we're here still. If it was just about well, you could leave tomorrow and go, okay, well, that's, that's it. One does get tempted sometimes. Go, well, just end it. But the universal plan is that every single mind will do this. So imagine if Yeshua had come to his enlightenment, he'd done his, say, 40-day mystic experience in the desert. He said, right, that's it. I'm out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. And he just threw himself off a cliff or something, and that was the end. You would never have heard of him. And his whole teaching and experience would not have come into the world to help us, which would have been a huge shame, wouldn't it?
Mm.
So he gave the gift of his life to us to say, well, I will be the example. I will walk this talk and I will show you, so that anyone can learn from my experience, because we need the symbols in the dream to awaken. So we need people who are awakened or awakening to show us the way out. And so he's calling us to be those people. You be it, so that other people can learn from you and you can lead them out of the dream, just like he did. And that's a mighty calling and a worthy purpose. So here we are, doing it every day. And hopefully, with the wonders of modern technology, other people listen and they go, wow, that was really interesting and inspiring, and who knows how many people it touches. So where are we? Do you want to do the lesson, or do you have to go now?
I'll just do the lesson, but I won't do a meditation, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's have a look at the lesson.
This is a day of stillness and of peace. This is a day of stillness and peace.
Yeah, I didn't think it needed much changing. Just, I don't know why it puts two ofs. Sort of made it simpler and more direct.
Okay.
Stillness and peace. Okay, so you want to read the original? Does that help if you read the original? You just want to go to the translation?
I'd rather do the translation because I get to feel it in the translation. I don't get into my head then. My true self's vision looks through me today. Its perception shows me all things released and at peace, and offers this same vision to the world. And I accept this vision in its name, both for myself and for the world as well. What loveliness I look upon today. What pure formless awareness I perceive surrounding me. And I recognize it as an awareness in which I share. It is the pure formless awareness of perfect love itself. Beautiful. Yeah.
So I translated holiness. He's got the holiness of God himself and what holiness we see surrounding us. And holiness is pure formless awareness. So what pure formless awareness I perceive surrounding me, it's everywhere. Right? It's the ground of being, without which there would be nothing. So it must be everywhere. And I recognize there's an awareness in which I share, because it must be in me too. So this is the kind of universal oneness experience, universal unity consciousness that all the mystics and saints describe. It's everywhere, and I am it, and it is me, and it's everywhere. And it's the pure formless awareness of perfect love itself, which is also my awareness. I am that presence. I am that I am. I am that. And what else can you say? I am that. I am all of it. There's no form to it. I'm not this specific thing. I am that presence that underlies everything. That ultimately is everything. It's the essence of everything. Beyond the form, beyond the illusion of the seemingly separate forms. The pure formless awareness of perfect love itself. And you just drop into that feeling and you feel it. It's just like, you come home to that, yes, that is the truth. So any thoughts or feelings on that?
No, it just feels really nice. Yeah. I was just thinking about when you go to those networking events or groups or something and they say, introduce yourself, who are you? And that's like used to baffle me. I don't know the heck who if I am. And it's just like, it was ironic, you know, what to say, but I'm that presence. I am.
Just stand up and say, I am that I am.
That would just stop the conversation, wouldn't it?
And they go, who's this person?
Yeah.
Do you have a name? My name is I am.
Yeah.
And there might be a few people who got it. You went, oh, okay, all right. So this is interesting. And the rest would go, you're completely crazy.
Mm.
I remember listening to a Jim Carrey interview. And this interviewer, reporter, who she was interviewing him and asked him a question like, so, you know, what do you feel about this, Jim? Like, what's the next step in your career? I can't remember the question, but so, you know, it was a form question. And he just said, I don't even exist. She was like, what? And then he sort of started, you know, talking a bit about the presence and like beyond the ego. And you could just see she was like, what is he talking about? He's gone completely dotty. She had no idea. I don't even exist. And it was like completely flummoxed her. She's like, what's the next question you ask? Whereas most people are like, well, what's the next step in your career? And they jump straight into the ego, like, no. Well, you know, next day I want to do this and I want to do this. I'm really excited about my next project and da. Jim Carrey says, I don't even exist. Jim Carrey doesn't even exist anymore. I love it. He's brilliant. Just like, whoa. Rock the whole system. And he was at some, you know, Hollywood function or something like that. So it's like he's the avatar in the illusion saying, hang on, you know, like the character of Jim Carrey doesn't even exist. It's just like a character in the movie. It's the same thing. He's got it. It's like, what a great path to awakening. Just play a whole lot of make-believe characters as an actor. And then you realize, well, hang on, maybe my whole life's like that. I'm just acting in my own movie. I think he got it, and he's studied, you know, various Buddhist, you know, I think he's gone into Buddhism and various other things as well. But so it's everywhere. Awakening, it's happening, and you see it coming through in the media now. You see there are these pockets of people like him awakening, and then well, what else can you do but want to put it out and say to people, shake people up and say, well, yeah, actually, I don't really exist. And you could see he just had a twinkle in his eyes. Enlightenment is a joke. The joke's been on you. All right, so this day my mind is quiet.
Today my mind is quiet to receive the thoughts you offer me, and I accept what comes from you instead of from myself. I do not know the way to you, but you are wholly certain, my source. Guide your extension along the quiet path that leads to you. Help me let go completely and let the memory of you return to me. Yeah, lovely.
Help me let go completely.
Mm.
That's the true prayer.
Yeah.
True prayer for forgiveness. Let me let everything go completely, so that I can fully embrace this presence that I am. Because if I have one illusion remaining, then I haven't let go completely, and the memory of this presence has not returned fully to me. There remains a block to the awareness of love's presence in my mind. And that's how it goes. One illusion will do that. It splits your mind. One illusion keeps the illusion of a separate identity and awareness going, and the whole dream of form and time and space going. So it's an all or nothing deal. You've got to do it entirely, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all at once. That's the relaxation. Because people, oh, that's a bit hectic. Okay, but you've got infinite time. Time's gone on for 16 billion years. You can take as long as you want about this. So there's no rush. Just do it consciously every day, so that you know that you're learning. You're not wasting time by denying this. You're in the process of fully accepting and fully letting go. So to accept this presence of love fully, to accept who you are really fully, completely, you must let go completely. You see how those two are related? Which brings us back to the Eckhart's quote. And come full circle on the end where you begin. You lose yourself in the world, and your innermost sense of self, who you really are, is inseparable from the stillness. So you must let go of everything that disturbs your peace in order to know who you are. Okay. So do you need to go now?
Yeah, I need to go now. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that mind-blowing session.
Another one. I love them. It's amazing. I really enjoy them. So it's only a pleasure. And thank you for putting it out there. Are you going to join us tonight in the masterclass?
Oh yeah, I'll join the very first bit. Yeah.
Okay, 7 o'clock.
Yeah. See you then.
I'll be there. Yeah, I saw a few bookings on. I went into the meetup. There's a few.
Oh,
people.
did you? There's a few. Yeah.
So we'll see who shows up.
Yeah. Okay then.
All right.
Later.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sally. Namaste. Okay, so just going to have a quick look at this teaching on how can the perception of orders of difficulty be avoided. So let's see if we can bring that up. How can perception of order of difficulties be avoided? See how long this one is. 6 paragraphs. So belief in order of difficulties is the basis for the world's perception. It rests on differences, on uneven background and shifting foreground, on unequal heights and diverse sizes, on varying degrees of darkness and light, and thousands of contrasts in which each thing seen competes with every other in order to be recognized. A larger object overshadows the smaller one. A brighter thing draws the attention from another. Less intensity of appeal. And a more threatening idea, one conceived of as more desirable by the world's standards, completely upsets the mental balance. What the body's eyes behold is only conflict. Look not to them for peace and understanding. So Yeshua's saying, we will never find peace and understanding in the perceptions of the body's eyes, in all of these seeming differences seem to happen here, varying degrees of dark and lightness, thousands of differences, contrasts, and there is no peace of mind in that perception. The fact that the world perceived through the ego's eyes is designed to disturb our peace of mind and to prevent us from experiencing pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is who we really are. So number 2, illusions are always illusions of differences. How could it be otherwise? By definition, an illusion is an attempt to make something real that is regarded as of major importance, but is recognized as being untrue. Right? So we make it real in our minds, we give it importance, but actually underneath that we recognize it is untrue. So the mind therefore seeks to make it true out of its intensity of desire to have it for itself. Right? So he's giving us a clue as to how we actually miscreated this whole universe. Through desire, intensity of desire to have this special self-identity, special self for ourselves. That intensity of desire led to the miscreation of the entire world. We wanted to make that true for ourselves. So we've invented an illusion. That's a travesty. Illusions are travesties of creation. Travesties of creation is really extension of being. Attempts to bring truth to lies. Finding truth unacceptable, the mind revolts against truth and gives itself an illusion of victory. Finding health a burden, it retreats into feverish dreams. And in these dreams, the mind is separate, different from other minds, with different interests of its own, and able to gratify its needs at the expense of others. So we think we're separate, we're different from other minds, we're in a body, we have different interests, different beliefs, different goals, different needs, and we can gratify our needs at the expense of others. So we become tuned to the what's in it for me frequency, and we will do anything that we need to do to gratify our own needs at the expense of others. Which is the essence of being unfair to someone. I'm willing to gratify myself at your expense, which is then clearly denying oneness. It's a violation of the golden rule: do unto others as you have them do unto you. And this is the root of all evil. You want to gratify your needs at the expense of others. So then Yeshua says, where do all these differences come from? Certainly, they seem to be in the world outside, yet it is surely the mind that judges what the eyes behold. It is the mind that interprets the eyes' messages and gives them, quote, meaning. And this meaning does not exist in the world outside at all. It's in your own mind. What is seen as reality is simply what the mind prefers. Its hierarchy of values is projected outward. It sends the body's eyes to find it. So values, beliefs, projected out, and then body's eyes, which are the mechanism of perception, instructed to find what the mind prefers. So we see what we want to see. It's another way of saying it. We see what we've actually set ourselves up to see. We project things out into the dream world, perceive them as real, and conclude that that whole experience is reality rather than the delusion that it is. The body's eyes will never see except through differences. And that's what they're designed to do. Focus on the differences. Yet, it's not the messages they bring on which perception rests. Only the mind evaluates their messages. So only the mind is responsible for seeing. So the mind is responsible for seeing. We project out on one level of the mind, we perceive on another, and that process is all mental. And our senses just allow that experience to happen, but actually it's all mind. It's all a setup, a construct of mind. So energy is projected thought. Another way of saying that. All in thought. All energy that we perceive outside of ourselves is actually our projected thought. And so our mind that's made this whole dream up alone decides whether what is seen is real or illusory, desirable or undesirable, pleasurable or painful. So there's nothing real about it. It's how you choose to perceive things. And you can see that in the world. You know, someone might perceive something as very painful. Let's say being whipped, very painful. And yet someone else might think that's pleasure. They're into, sadomasochistic fantasies and they associate pleasure with that. It's the same thing, but their perception of it is different. So what that highlights is that only perception is real. We live in a perceptual world. The perception, clarify, not only perception is real, only perception makes things in this world seem to be real. There's nothing really happening. It's just our perception that seems to make it real. And so we must go beyond perception in order to awaken from this unreal dream, transcend it, and take our mind into an awareness beyond perception. So it is in the sorting out and the categorizing activities of the mind that errors in perception enter. Because this here correction must be made. So we make errors in perception and we must correct those errors. That's what the whole process of forgiveness or letting go is about. So the mind classifies what the body's eyes bring to it according to its preconceived values, judging where each sense datum fits best. What basis could be faultier than this? Unrecognized by itself, has itself asked to be given what will fit into these categories. And having done so, it concludes that the categories must be true. So it's a setup. We've asked to be given what will fit into the categories and then concludes the categories must be true. Set ourselves up for misperception and deception. On this the judgment of all differences rests, because it is on this that judgments of all depend. Can this be confused? Can this confused and senseless, quote, reasoning be depended on for anything? No, not really. Because it's just confused. It's a setup. False projection, false belief leads to false projection, it leads to false perception. And there can be no order of difficulty in healing, merely because all sickness is illusion. Is it harder to dispel the belief of the insane in a larger hallucination as opposed to a smaller one? Will he agree more quickly to the unreality of a louder voice he hears than to that of a softer one? Will he dismiss more easily a whispered demand to kill than shout? Do the number of pitchforks the devils he sees carrying affect their credibility in his perception? Quite a nice, humorous, the number of pitchforks. This is kind of poking fun at us a little bit here. So we see devils with many pitchforks. So we see a multiplicity of problems in the world, but actually they're all unreal. The number of the pitchforks or problems doesn't really matter. So his mind has categorized them all as real, so they're all real to him. When he realizes they are all illusions, they will disappear. And so it is with healing. Properties of illusions which seem to make them different are really irrelevant, for their properties are as illusory as they are. The body's eyes will continue to see differences. The mind, as let itself be healed, will no longer acknowledge them. There will be those who seem to be sicker than others. The body's eyes will report their changed appearances, as before. But the healed mind will put them all in one category. They are unreal. This is the gift of its teacher, the understanding that only two categories are meaningful in sorting out the messages the mind receives from what appears to be the outside world. And of these two, but one is real, just as reality is wholly real, apart from size and shape and time and place, for differences cannot exist within it. So too are illusions without distinctions. One answer to sickness of any kind is healing. The one answer to all illusions is truth. And just feel into that for a few seconds. such a clarity and simplicity to these words. Let those drop in, connect you with your source, who you really are. Experience that truth and carry it with you for the rest of the afternoon and evening. Practice today's lesson well. I've sent you if you're in the Art of Letting Go program, sent you a breath break recording, 3 minutes, to allow you to practice it, as well as 2 meditations to practice it in a longer practice period this evening. And if you're not in the Art of Letting Go program, then join us tonight at 7 p.m. UK time. It's 9 p.m. South African time for a masterclass, which will tell you more about this life-changing program and how you can benefit from it. So just head over to theaolg.com to find out more. That's theaolg.com, standing for theartoflettinggo.com, and find out more and register there, and you'll be sent the login link. And if you're in the program, please share that with others to spread the truth, share the love, share the peace, share the joy by inviting friends, family, colleagues, people you think would be interested in really changing their life to it. So that brings us to the end of the session. It's just gone 3 o'clock, so sign off now. Thank you for listening, and namaste. Which means the I am presence in me acknowledges and honors that same I am presence in you.